Please welcome back Jamie Oliver. Nice to see you. Good morning.
Good, brother.
How you doing?
Oh, thank you.
How are you?
I'm good, man. It's good to see you.
Yes, nice to see you again. This is, I like the idea of the food revolution because you're ramping this up. Every time you take on a new project, it's becoming more and more political for you, isn't it?
Yeah, and insane. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's a funny thing. I mean, part of it's creative. I mean, like, you know, you go from doing a show like Jamie at Home or Jamie Does that hasn't come out here yet, which is just hardcore cooking, aspirational, like meeting like new people around the world. But there's this kind of campaigny side that, in a way, isn't really me. I never grew up political ever. You know, I was just like a fairly subservient, you know, restaurateur's son, you know, and I was in special needs all my life at school, so I was never empowered to think that my opinion mattered. You know, I just knew I could cook. But over the years, you know, and it's like yourself, you've been doing this a long time, you know, as your relationship with the public grows, and when you've got something to say that's important and you haven't lied to them before, the public listen and they act. Right. So I've kind of got myself in this situation now where even people like Greenpeace give me jobs to do. You know, I've got a desk like that full. And so, you know, the food revolution's an interesting one, and it's, you know, it's sort of taken me, I've been doing stuff like this in England for many years now, and I've been seeing the benefits. And it's not about being a food Nazi. It's not about saying, oh, you shouldn't have burgers or ice cream, or, you know, if you go to the circus with your kid, you mustn't give them a candy floss. I really believe strongly it's not about that. But what the stuff I'm fighting against is the fact that, you know, the bad guys that are flogging a lot of the food, everyday food, you know, if they can get away with giving you a load of old shit, they will give it to you. And so the food revolution really is about creating a paranoia, a creative paranoia with the public well, basically it's to expect more. And I believe that if you get the public to expect more, they'll get it.
Well, man, people are afraid to go after the food industry because it is an industry. And I imagine that you're facing some of the real realities in America of what this is like. In Los Angeles, they're fighting like crazy to keep you out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we're next, season 2 is going to be a totally different ball game. We're going to get really down with it, and I'm going to be using all of my... To be honest, for season 1, Food Revolution, I was being polite British boy, dipping my my feet in the pond. Yeah. Just, I didn't want to upset anyone too much. Next year is going to be medieval, I'm telling you. I swear to God. And I've, you know, and the really exciting thing at the moment is, like, this thing that's happening now is a peach. Like, everyone wants to contribute to... People don't want to worry about this stuff. It's really boring, but they do want it fixed. Right. And this is the first generation in America and England where kids are expected to have a shorter life than their parents.
And it's almost entirely related to diet.
The biggest killer in America and England today is heart disease, diet-related illnesses, strokes, diabetes. It's overtaken cancers, and it's largely self-inflicted. Largely. And, you know, and also what's ironic is that neither of our countries can afford it.
Sure. What about the role of class? What is the role that class plays in the diet?
It's a really good question. I mean, I think what's interesting about it is, well, the reality is that class plays a massive part. You know, the poorer you are, the more chance you have of dying young. Fact. The poorer you are, absolutely the alignment with terrible diets and lack of self-esteem, obesity, bad health, you know, and it's really upsetting socially, creatively, and health in families. The other reality is it hasn't been until 70 years ago, for the thousands of years before, class really had nothing to do with, I mean, with the exception of famine, you know, the poorest people of all cultures, and anyone in here that knows their food knows I'm talking truth, the best dishes in any culture have always been the cucina povera, the poor people's cooking of Italy, or the street food of the Asian countries.
But you also see in North America, and I'm sure in England, it's not just people in low economic situations that are out of shape. It's rampant throughout the middle class now, and unless you have access to
it is rampant for the middle classes, but it's just much. See, the difference is, right, is if you're living largely on pre-packed processed food or fast food, if you're a bit richer, the chances of you having a slightly better version of that are higher. So I think, you know, I suppose the differential that we're talking about is food education, or the ability to turn a bunch of ingredients quickly into something you can eat. That's the missing part. So that's what we're doing on Food Revolution. I mean, just to kind of get you up to date with Huntington, where I was working. Since I've left there, I set up the Huntington Kitchen, which does free cooking lessons for the locals, for anyone. That has 5,500 people go through a year, which is about 10% of the population. Without me getting involved at all, the local hospital has funded that for a third year, which is great.
That's amazing.
The fresh food is in all the local schools, and now the governor of the state is going to roll it out to another district, which is great. But what's really interesting, it's a little bit like, it's interesting with food as well. If you've ever seen a bit of a dodgy area in town and a nice restaurant or a famous restaurant like pops up, people start cleaning their windows. And the street starts to reinvigorate. And in Huntington, they've got farmers markets, a deli's open next door, which all the recession empty buildings were there, and they never had a local food restaurant in that town. And now they've got one. So I suppose what's really nice to see is Huntington is fixing Huntington. It's not like the Jamie Oliver show, like da-da-da-da. You know, it's...
But that's important to you, isn't it, to not be that guy?
Yeah, because, you know, being sort of made out to be a hero, it makes me want to throw up, because I'm really just a normal guy. But my passion is food and people. I love people. I grew up in a pub where I'd have a gypsy up against the bar next to a businessman, next to an old-age pensioner. You know, my two best mates were two gypsies and a cockney.
Do they let you call him gypsy there?
Yeah, you can say gypsy.
You can call gypsy there?
Yeah.
Oh, we don't call them that.
You can't call them pikeys. That's rude. that's you know, because that's a rude thing to say to a gypsy.
Okay, fair enough. But where did the love of food become something of values to you? Because you are sticking your neck out.
The love of food for me was just, it was the only thing I was good at.
And how did it become something that became about values?
I mean, I know I'm an old romantic, but I think whether it's religion, whether it's countries that are at war with each other, whether it's kind of being a white boy going into a very black area, or, you know, you got the American series coming out now on Food Network, which I'm so proud of. It's more of a documentary piece than a cooking show. But, like, some of it is hardcore show on food of America that you ain't never seen before. And, like, when you're in the sort of emotional... when you're in the kind of reservations of Arizona with the Navajo, who have been treated like crap for 100 years, you know, or longer, and you're seeing their cultures fade away and they're trying to keep it alive through food, you know, it takes you. When you're in East LA, where no one will go, especially being white, you know, and I was working and cooking with the Bloods and the Crips, and, like... You know, you've got a war, you know, in East LA, more people die from machine gun and gun crime than the boys in Afghanistan and Iraq, right? But you never hear about it because it's in East LA and no one frankly cares there. You know?
The media don't care.
And it's not about colour or religion. It's about territory, and it's like, and colours, and like, you know, you wear your hat back the wrong way and you got red on. I mean, if you come from Essex like me, you turn up and you're in a red outfit. Hi! And it's like, get out, put the blue on now! You know, it's like, I just wanted to cook some fajitas. How did you make the salsa? It's like, duck.
But that's for you too, right? That's an awakening that you just can't go in and import your own reality, right? You have to deal with other realities.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just fascinated with how food can, you know, what for me, you know, at the hardest core element of what I see is when I work. And I make myself, interestingly, that when I'm comfortable, I do my worst work. When I'm uncomfortable and fairly miserable, I'm doing my best work. So I actually spent quite a lot of the 10 years that I've known you being quite miserable. And
that's a dodgy place to be over time, though, isn't it?
Well, that's why you see my career be so erratic. That's why you see Jamie at home growing stuff, cooking stuff in me back garden, no machine guns or bandanas, and then you're in the hood doing something, and then I come back and I do like Jamie does, which is sort of like aspirational and out and about, and then you kind of go and do Food Revolution, and I know you guys have seen Ministry of Food that was out last year, which was, again, it was about, you know, when you work with families, or for the bits that really touch my heart is when you work with young single mums that have kids and they've got no money, and you know they've got no self-esteem as a mother. And it's for dads as well, but, you know, I get more attached to the mums. And their whole, you know, people, the press in England were horrible. They were like, they took the mickey out of this girl that didn't know that boiling water boiled, right? And I know that I can understand why you could say, well, that's stupid, boiling water boils. But if that child that has now turned into a young adult has never been around a pot that was put on, filled with water and anything cooked in it, why would they know what boiling water looks like? Where do you see boiling water unless you put the pan on?
Right.
So, I mean, that's how basic it is. But what I love is when you give them a few little tips and they cook for their child.
That's amazing. Can you cook tamales with the Crips and the Bloods? What did you cook?
All sorts. I mean, I was in an area, interesting, there's a place called Homeboy, which is like a restaurant which is all the ex-cons come and work in, a bit like 15 back in England. But yeah, it was kind of peculiar. I mean, I was literally 1 minute, I was with this geezer that was kind of like, yeah, when I was in a gang, like I left last year, here was me, and there he is, machine gun, holding a machine gun. I'm like, yeah. And he goes, anyway, I love these enchiladas, they're really great. And this salsa, just blacken the skin, it's cool.
Nice. Anthropology, all right, what would you have for your last meal?
I'd have to say my mum's roast chicken with the full Monty Works going with it, mainly because if I don't say that, she'll slap me.
Nice. Favorite food when you were a kid?
Probably my mum's fish pie rocked.
How often do you use the microwave?
Not very often. I use it to soften butter a bit when I've got the munchies and I need it to be soft and spread it quickly.
Why do you have the munchies?
Because I get back... Because I get...
You don't have that. Hey, you know when people drop food on the ground and they say 2-second rule and they eat it? Can it be longer than 2 seconds? Is that real?
Yeah, I mean, I think the 2-second rule is just like a kind of cute little poem that kind of makes you, if you're really hungry or greedy, pick something up off the floor. But, you know, it depends what you drop it on.
That's a good answer. Other than cooking, what makes you most happy?
Music makes me happy. My kids make me happy. And that's probably... I've got 4 kids now, bro. Since I've known you, I've knocked out 4 kids and I haven't got a clue where they come from.
Yeah.
But...
Well, if you want, on the internet, they'll show you. You can find out how it happens.
Have you got a diagram?
I've got a diagram how it works.
Funny.
There's a new poll in the UK that indicates 1 in 10 men have actually cooked naked. Have you?
I have. Yeah, I have. This question seems to come up quite a lot in Canada.
Well, then where do you put the oven mitt?
I didn't have one.
Okay.
And my story ended up in tears because I'm going to very quickly say it. I burnt the end of it, and it was on Valentine's Day, and it ended up with frozen food on top of it.
So that's my next question.
I don't know. Every time I come to Canada, I end up talking about this.
But what's remarkable is that you have an answer for it. That's spectacular.
Yeah, I should just start lying and say no idea. But,
you mentioned music. What's your desert island band?
I'll be caught between like the Killers because they're recent, or like Red Hot Chili Peppers because it was old school and like college times, and they were Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Both American bands.
Sorry about that.
No, I don't mind. Yeah. I'm just curious. What's your favorite Muppet?
Muppet?
Yeah.
Kermit.
Nicely done. Not the Swedish Chef. Interesting choice. Jamie's got a book as well called Jamie's America right here. And watch for season 2 of Food Revolution, which is coming up next year. Jamie Oliver, everybody. Good to see you, man. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it. Trauma.com is the website. We'll see you again.